Hey guys, and welcome to Shooting the Shit with VGSquiggy, episode 2. I'm sure you guys probably got a disclaimer at the beginning of this video. Today we're going to be talking about some rather serious and somewhat called dark topics. So I just want to put that out there. So that's a trigger warning, I guess. But before I get into that, I just want to give you guys a little bit of an update for the channel. This is coming out on Wednesday, so we've got today's episode and then 2 more episodes of Uncharted here on the channel, and then we'll be finishing that up. Starting next Monday, we will be on Uncharted 2. Funny story about the Uncharted 2 series. I actually had about half of it recorded and edited, and lo and behold, the files vanished. Both my gameplay, I did manage to find my gameplay, however, all my live commentary vanished. So I'm actually going to be starting that recording as soon as I finish up this STS. But that won't affect you guys too much. You guys will still be getting it on Monday. Just it will be a little more rushed, but I'm sure that'll be better quality, especially the commentary will be better quality than it was. After Uncharted 2, we'll be going through to Uncharted 3 and 4. My goal is to have Uncharted 2, 3, and 4 uploaded here on the channel before the next iteration in Uncharted comes out. For those of you that don't know, on I believe August 22nd, we've got Uncharted The Lost Legacy will be coming out. It is not, I had to guess, it's not going to be a full game. I know that it is going to be a release all its own. It's not going to be DLC for 4. But I don't expect it to be as long as Uncharted 1 through 4. But we will be uploading that on the channel. My goal is to get that when the day it comes out, and have that upload schedule start that day. And because that'll be new, hopefully we'll get some more traffic here on the channel. And yeah, so that will be good and exciting. So with that being said, we may end up with Uncharted 4. We may end up doing multiple uploads per day, just so we can get Uncharted 4 all done before Lost Legacy comes out, because I want everybody to be able to catch up on storyline before we jump into Lost Legacy. With all of that being said, now that you guys are caught up, know what's going on here on the channel, I'm going to go ahead and do another trigger warning here. Right now, we're going to start getting into the main topic for today. So, as you guys know, you learned in last week's STS, my family runs a drive-in movie theater, and this last weekend was the weekend before the 4th of July, and it is consistently our busiest night of the year. We had a little less than 2,000 people Saturday night. So this past weekend was really, really crazy, and didn't get a whole lot of sleep. However, on top of all of that, Friday night, I got home from the drive-in, and I got home from the drive-in around 4:30 a.m. Friday night, so that would be Saturday morning. And everybody else that lives here with me was already home. And I came in, and the short version of it is I was tossed into a situation where I witnessed somebody trying to commit suicide. And I just thought that it's something that really needs to be talked about more. A little bit of background before we get any further into this. Um, when I was around 12 or 13, I was diagnosed with clinical depression. And there are several other people in my family and extended family that have it. And I took medication for it for about 4 years. And then after that, I had kind of trained myself, and I'm able to cope with it very well, which is why very rarely do people ever see it come across unless, or even can even tell that I have it, unless I bring it up to them in conversation, which I don't talk about it a lot. Um, so with that knowledge, other people in my life that deal with those dark places and depression in general often come to me for advice if they're feeling down or just feel like they need to talk about stuff. They'll often come to me and they want to know how I deal with it. And everybody reacts to depression differently. Um, so it's hard to just, for lack of a better term, it's hard to teach somebody how to cope with their depression. You know, I'd venture to say that there's probably hundreds of thousands of people in the U.S. alone that have depression, and their only means of dealing with it is the medication that they're given from their doctor. And if you talk to anybody who, some people that are on medication for it, and pretty much all of them that aren't on medication for it, they will tell you that a lot of those medications can really mess with your life and just how you think in general. I know from my experience, the medication that you're often given for antidepressants, especially what I was on, can often just numb you entirely. Um, in a perfect world, the treatment for depression would make you not depressed, and it would make you happy and just be able to enjoy life, while still being able to understand when things were not good and when it was okay to be sad. However, that is not really the case for the most part when people are on medication. Um, and some people are okay on a medication, but a lot of people, it just numbs them entirely, and it makes them, you know, it makes some people, somebody could come in and say they won the lottery and that they were going to share half of it with you, and people would just be like, "Oh, that's cool." And they wouldn't get excited. They wouldn't be able to get excited, not because they didn't want to, but because their brain just won't let them. Um, a, a little peek inside of my head on how I deal with it. It's way easier to say than to execute. Basically, what I have taught myself that I have to do in order to fight my depression back every single day is you have to you have to understand and tell your brain that what it's thinking is not true and it's wrong. You have to tell yourself that your brain is being stupid, but at the same time you have to tell yourself and understand that you are not stupid. It is your brain. Depression itself means that there is a literal chemical imbalance in your brain, and for that reason, a lot of times it is wrong and it is being stupid. So moving back to the events of this past weekend on that Friday evening, Saturday morning, the experience of watching somebody or just communicating with somebody who is at that point of trying to commit suicide. It's something that I've dealt with, you know, because I've dealt with depression. I have been the one to talk people down. Um, However, I've never experienced it like this. I've never I've never had to be physical with somebody. I've never had to physically hold somebody down and force them to get pills out of their mouth that, if they swallow, will do a lot of damage to their body. So while I'm having to be physical with this person to get them to not hurt themselves, another person that was here in the house, I had to have them call the police because I couldn't get this person to calm down. So the police came, and they've dealt with this stuff before. They're trained to handle it. They came in. They asked me what had happened. Um, at that point, um, the person in question uh, had lunged for a sharp object and was planning on hurting themselves with that at that point. And so at that point, about 4 officers had to move in on them, get them to the ground, and cuff them. Um, they were very close to needing to use um, a taser to neutralize them because of how much they were fighting back. After that, they got uh, they got the person outside, got him in the ambulance, took him to the emergency room. After all that, the person, because they were detained by police in order to get them to the hospital, they were in detention, which basically means that no one is allowed in to see them until further notice. So around 5:15 in the morning, Saturday morning, is when the person finally arrived at the ER. After that, I was obviously a little flustered, so I ended up going to a friend's house and just talking to them about it for a while. And then around 7:30 in the morning, so little over 2 hours later, the hospital finally called me back and said that loved ones could come in and see the person. So me and a couple others went to the hospital and then ended up having to wait for a couple more hours in the waiting room. When we finally did get in to see the person, pretty much immediately they were transferred from the emergency room to ICU, which basically means that they just admitted them to the hospital. The person ended up being there for about 24 hours, a little less. They had to undergo a lot of medical treatment, as well as they had to undergo a psych evaluation, and they're on a new medication now. And they were released. They were released Saturday night. And the fact that they were released and they're on this new medication and that was the solution. And I believe that this person is going to be in a new therapy group. Whether or not any of that is the solution to this issue is a whole other topic that I don't really want to get into in this video, because we're already looking at probably over 10 minutes of video. So I kind of just want to move forward. So that's what happened. That's what happened, and, if all of that wasn't, I understand that I'm going to use the word traumatizing to describe the way I experienced it. But I also want to iterate that I understand that it was obviously much more traumatizing for the person in question. But that being said, if all of this hadn't been traumatizing enough, when you add in the factor that this was somebody very, very close to me, that I care for dearly, and when you see a person like this, in a state where you don't think that's even them, it really makes you think about a lot of stuff after the fact. And I just wanted to make this video, and if you know somebody that you either think maybe or that they struggle with depression, please, please, please talk to them. Even if it's just a phone call a day or a text a day or as much as you can do, please talk to them. And you don't have to talk to them about depression all the time. You can just talk to them. Let them know you care. Let them know that if they need to talk about stuff, they can. And if that doesn't help and you think they still need help, please let somebody else know. Depression and anxiety. Depression and anxiety are terrifying illnesses. There's not a cure for them. There's treatment. There's not a cure for them. And I'm not saying that there aren't other conditions that we need to worry about, like cancer. Cancer is obviously a huge thing. But I feel like cancer also overshadows a lot of other things that don't need to be overshadowed, that need to be out there in the open. We need to be able to talk about them. We need to be able to teach high schoolers, teach kids about these things so that they know that if they start to feel certain ways, they need to tell somebody. If they think other people start to feel those ways, they understand they need to communicate with that person or communicate that situation to another person, whether it be an adult or whether that be an adult, a family member, just another person in general, anybody. I hope that one day there is some type of cure for depression and for anxiety, because a lot of times those two things go hand in hand. But I think that we're a long ways off from that ever happening, if it ever does. So at this point, there are treatments that nullify the effects of depression and anxiety, but none of them are good enough. There are people that are on those medications that commit suicide every single day. And that's not okay, and that needs to change. And maybe the answer really is just talking to people. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe we just need to do that more than we are in today's society. With this past weekend, and everything that went down, there were a lot of tears that came out of me, and there were a lot of tears that came out of a lot of people. And because, I'm not that, I'm an adult, but I'm not that much of an adult, I'm 20 years old, and the person in question was significantly older than me, which surprised a lot of people. But I think it's important to realize that if a person is old enough to have their own thoughts, they're old enough to suffer from depression. And if they are old enough to suffer from depression, they're old enough to have those suicidal thoughts. That being said, all day Saturday, as people slowly found out about what had happened, one thing that I heard a lot of was that's not something that someone at your age should have to go through. And while I do agree with that statement, I think it's important that any adult in our culture should be able to. If they're put in that situation, they need to know how to handle it. I think that that's just as important as many people knowing how to conduct CPR. If you're out in public and, let's say you're on a subway and you're in a car with one other person and that person starts choking, you need to know what to do. And I think that if you are sitting at home one night and you get a text from a friend or a text from anybody and you think that something is going to happen and they're going to hurt themselves, you need to know how to deal with that. And the only way that can happen is to educate. And I'm not saying that we need to instill classes for this in our schools. I'm saying that I think that people, just even if it's just out on their own, need to take the initiative and understand that if you have this knowledge, you could save countless people's lives. And I think that's what's most important. If anybody is wondering, the person in question from this past weekend is in stable condition, and they are back home and they're doing well. Thus far, their new medication is doing fine, and obviously everyone around them is keeping a very close eye on them. Even that being the case, life goes on. So this person's back at work. Um, you know, a lot of people aren't in a situation that if something traumatizing like that happens in their lives, they can't just, they can't take weeks off. They just have to get back to what life's all about, and that for a lot of people is, just going to work, paying the bills, and taking time for yourself whenever you get it. I know that this was a very different video from our last STS last week, and I hope you guys are okay with that. I want this series to be me talking to you guys about whatever I think I need to. I want to be able to stay connected with you guys, and I want to spread good messages. And I think this message from this week is really, really important. So if you guys would be so kind, please share this video. Share it on your timeline. You don't even have to write anything if you don't want to. Just share it. You don't have to tag any friends. You don't have to send it to anybody specifically. Just share it on your timeline. Share it on Twitter. Share it wherever. This is a really, really important message, guys. And if we can get as many people to see this as possible, just maybe it'll make a difference. And just maybe a lot of people can have access to more people to talk to about this and more help. But thank you guys for listening. If you listen this long, it means a lot to me. And please share this video, like this video. I want to get this video some exposure, not even for me, but for everybody that suffers from these conditions. And all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, or at least understand this message in this video, and understand its importance. But all that being said, this has been VGSquiggy, and I'll see you in the next one.